Over the last couple of days there's been numerous updates, and most of them are pretty small and revolving around Ashenvale, but there's a couple that was put out last night that actually look really good. At first glance you might not think they're very big, but the Living Flame one for Mage in particular is going to be huge, and when we actually look at an example of why, I think you'll understand. First of all though, just a few little hotfixes from December the 18th. The battle for Ashenvale will now progress about 50% faster than previously. Agrand actually put out a massively detailed sort of breakdown of how even the back end of Ashenvale works, so I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to go and read it. I was actually going to do a video breaking it down, but to be honest with you, the post, just go read through it. It's really interesting, and you'll have a much better grasp on how and when these events actually start and sort of the trouble that Blizzard's having in the background. So yeah, interesting post, go check it out. Next up, which I thought was mental, and I'll be honest with you, I've done quite a lot of Ashenvale since this hotfix went live, but if you haven't actually done any Ashenvale since the 18th of December, the reputation gain now for participating in killing an enemy Keeper of the Grove or Blade Master has been increased to 400, whereas this was 200. So now you absolutely want to be getting around the map and making sure you get these tagged, at least, you know, 2, because if you're starting like on the east side, for example, and you're not getting shafted by having to go and do Zoram Strand, but being able to get 400 for each keeper, and obviously then you get a big chunk at the end when it finishes as well, it's pretty crazy rep. Getting to friendly and honoured, literally now it's more or less free, it takes no time at all. Do a few Ashenvale events and you're laughing. Also one that I've not actually noticed there being an issue for, but I'll just mention it anyway, they fixed an issue that caused the shadowy figure in Alterac Mountains to not be seen by players who should otherwise be able to see them. Didn't even know this was an issue, but if it's been bugging you, you'll be alright now. And now for the changes that actually went out last night. They shouldn't have gone live yet, maybe on NA realms, but certainly not EU, because these are going to go live at maintenance, so in the next 24 hours both regions will have it anyway. But mages, so Living Flame now benefits from and consumes Arcane Blast. Now going back to the podcast when we had Crix on, we was discussing this before Season of Discovery even went live, and we all just assumed that this is how Living Flame would work anyway. The thing is, we've been used to it not working this way, so if you're not aware because you don't play a mage, Arcane Blast, each time you cast it, you gain a stack, and it stacks up to 4 times, giving 15% extra damage on your next ability that isn't an Arcane Blast, or increases the healing of regen as well. Now obviously when you get that stacked 4 times, it's going to increase damage by 60% on the next ability. If that next ability is Living Flame, it's going to reset the stacks because as you gain stacks it costs more mana as well, but now it's going to increase the damage of Living Flame by 60%, and now that is massive, because just taking this as an example, this is actually the last Akamai kill I'd done as a healer, so this wasn't even worrying about going all out DPS, but in total during that fight I got 2 Living Flames off. Each hit of Living Flame was doing an average of around 52 a tick, and it done 1.9k damage. Now you got to remember, this is just an instant cast, you just press it, you forget about it, it's just doing damage for the whole 20 seconds that it's up. 60% on top of this would have meant that it done 3040 damage, up from 1.9k. That's a huge amount of extra damage, pretty much for nothing, because rotationally nothing's going to change. You'll go up to 4 stacks of Arcane Blast, you'll use Living Flame, so it will delay its usage slightly. The amount of damage that you're going to get out is going to be immense, and obviously you'd still get 2 casts of it out, so it's not like by stacking up 4 Arcane Blasts it's only going to limit you to being able to use 1, you'd still get 2 off, but both of them are going to be doing 60% extra damage. Like, that is actually crazy, and I'm really looking forward to see it as Arcane DPS in particular, actually, you know, rather than me having to heal, just being able to worry about pumping. I mean, this could be enough actually just to make it clear that Arcane is better than Fire in this phase, because at the moment, as you can see, other than a couple of outliers, really the damage isn't massively different. We're talking 30-40 DPS. Now, will this make 30-40 DPS? Maybe not, but I still think it's going to be significant enough that actually, like me as an example, I'd often respec to Fire if I weren't needed to heal a specific reset of BFD. Now I probably wouldn't bother, I'll just stay Arcane and DPS knowing that actually this is going to be a lot of fun. Now what they've also done, not only for Paladin but for Shaman as well, is they've increased the mana gained from the certain ability that makes these classes a mana battery. So for Paladins, mana gained from Seal of Martyrdom to party and raid members has been increased. So Seal of Martyrdom now grants all party and raid members 20% of the damage the Paladin takes from the Seal, and it was 10%. So essentially we're getting double the mana now for the party, which is awesome. And exactly the same has happened with the Shaman as well, but theirs is for Shamanistic Rage. So it increases the amount of mana the party gains to 20%, up from 10%. Again, this is all to enable casters to be able to pump more. I know you're like, oh great, it's a Shaman buff or it's a Paladin buff. It's really not. Like, every one of these changes that we see in some way, shape or form is actually to benefit the casters and bring their damage up. Without an Evocate as a mage, if the fight lasts too long, I'm struggling for mana on every fight. Also for the Paladins, Avenger's Shield movement slow is now properly considered a snare, and it can be removed from things like Hand of Freedom, for example, or power shifting. So this is just an actual quick fix to it. It's not a buff. I mean, you could see it as a bit of a nerf in PvP, but ultimately, obviously anything that can slow you, if you've got an ability to be able to break that slow, you absolutely should be able to. They've buffed Blade Dance for rogues, and I really like this. As someone who's actually playing a rogue at the moment quite a lot, Blade Dance now has been updated to grant 10% parry at all ranks. Before this fix, obviously, each point would give you an extra % of parry, and it would also increase the total duration. Now, all it does is increases the total duration. You're always getting that 10% parry, so it don't matter if you're getting Blade Dance up with 1 point or you're getting it up with 5 points. It's more just about maintaining the buff, which I really, really like, actually. Rogue tanks have actually surprised me. I don't think they're as bad as people are saying. It's just a shame they've not really got any way of holding more than one mob. And then regarding professions, firstly, what is the change? So tailors may now learn and craft Invoker's Cord and Invoker's Mantle. Both grant additional spell damage and healing, and these recipes can be purchased from Boria in Orgrimmar or Alina in Darnassus. Now the two new tailoring recipes, like I said, are Invoker's Cord and Invoker's Mantle, which is a belt and a pair of shoulders. Now actually, since first starting to record this video, they are now live. It looks like they're already live on NA Realms currently, but we can confirm a couple of good things. Firstly, it isn't a limited supply recipe, so if you was planning on camping this vendor to make a bit of gold, unfortunately that isn't going to happen. We also can see exactly what they require to craft, so you might be able to, especially if you're on EU, grab some of these really cheap now, ready for when the patterns go live. But it's basically just a few bolts of silk cloth, a shadow gem, and some fine thread and grey dye, which is just bought from the vendors. Now, shadow gem, up until this point, has been ridiculously cheap, so again, grabbing some of these will probably be a good idea, because I can see every caster in the game at level 25 using this waist. Maybe not the shoulders, because there are options for shoulders, more so for Horde than Alliance, because the Horde get the frayed chestnut mantle, which comes from the quest in BFD. But overall, they're both solid items, and it is just to give those spellcasters a little bit more bonus damage to start bringing them up in line with the pump of physical DPS. Be sure to like and subscribe. Feel free to follow me over on Kick, and I'll see you on the next one.